On this episode of Key Talks, we sit down with physical therapist Karen Wisheu to explore developmental coordination disorder, what it is, how it impacts movement and learning, and the ways early intervention can make a life-changing difference. Stay tuned. It's time for Key Talks. This is Key Talks, a podcast by Key Creative. My name is Deanna Halls, and currently my favorite sensory accommodation is peppermint oil, because I'm nursing a touch of a headache right now, and Karen was nice enough to lend me some of hers. And Michael Schwake, who's on my left, our technical director, tech specialist here. What is your favorite sensory accommodation?
I'm going to say like peppermint oil is really awesome, but lemongrass. Lemongrass is like kind of like just calms the whole body for me and kind of is a nice like reset. Spray a little bit on the pillow and kind of like especially help for someone who gets a lot of migraines myself. It is a great kind of like just sensory reset.
I love that. Okay. And then since this is your peppermint oil, is that also your favorite?
Oh yeah, it's my go-to for everything.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that helps with my headache, so I just kind of associate that with like calm.
We are not sponsored by peppermint oil, but
No.
If you would like to reach out for a endorsement on peppermint oil, we're here to do that. So again, we are Key Creative here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. We have all sorts of amazing therapists on our team: occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech language pathology, psychology, social work, and other behavioral interventions for youth of all ages and all abilities. So our website, keycreative.com, that's QIcreative.com. You can check us out anytime, fill out an intake form, and you could be hearing from me. So for today's episode, we've had Karen here before for a more introductory episode on physical therapy with our other PT colleague, Trent. But today we're niching down a little bit, and today's topic is going to be...
We are going to be talking about developmental coordination disorder, also known as dyspraxia.
And that's something I did not know until 2 seconds ago, is that dyspraxia is the other name for DCD.
It's gone through a lot of names, not used anymore, but previously people would call it like clumsy child disorder, or I can't remember the actual term if it's disorder, but like they'd refer to it as like clumsy child.
Clumsy child disorder. Okay.
Yeah.
I feel judged right now.
Yeah, that was like the actual term that people used.
Yeah. And I had that said to me quite often as a kiddo. So,
man. Yeah, because I'm wondering what would be the diagnostic criteria? Like, when is clumsy too clumsy? When is it clinically clumsy?
So the diagnostic criteria usually breaks down to 4 components.
Okay.
So I'm trying to see if I can actually remember the 4 diagnostic criteria, but basically it is when you have a difficulty with motor learning, motor skills, or motor coordination that has an impact on your function or your ability to do daily activities or participate in school, in leisure. It's not just specific to kids, but that tends to be where it's most talked about.
Okay.
But it's a lifelong condition. So it applies throughout your entire life. So those are kind of the first 2. I think the first one is having the difficulties, and the second one is that it has that impact. And so then it's a delay compared to your age norm.
So like developmental milestone kind of deal.
Yeah.
I'm thinking if I were a parent and all kids are learning to walk, learning to crawl, learning to hold pencils and tie shoes, hold scissors, and you would say that it is kind of when you're starting to see a bit of a lag or a delay compared to your peers?
Sometimes.
Okay.
So what's interesting about DCD is that it's not exclusively a delay.
Okay.
So sometimes kids will, because kids are they're very creative. If something's really hard, they might just not do it. They might do something else. There doesn't have to be a delay in actually acquiring the milestone or doing the skill. Sometimes what you might just see is the effort that it takes to get there. So they might get to the same point, but maybe they got to the same point because the parent was teaching them the skill. Where like one sibling will just pick it up on their own. You might have the second sibling who has DCD. The parents had to really coach them through it, or it took a lot more effort. It was a lot more tiring to learn it. It took a lot more repetitions. They weren't able to learn it in the same environments that other kids were able to learn it, but they might still meet those milestones.
Okay. Yeah. Just takes them a bit longer. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. So I guess like my initial train of thought, I'm still kind of hugging the clumsiness concept of it, but can you tell me more about what it may actually look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a spectrum disorder. So you'll see people with those very mild presentations. Those are the ones who might still be able to achieve all those milestones. But maybe a bit more effort to kids that are genuinely struggling, not hitting milestones. But what that generally looks like is the name Developmental Coordination Disorder. It's very focused on coordination. It's on the communication sort of between the brain and the body, where those coordination pieces don't come in. So that applies to everything. So it applies to your gross motor skills. So sports, you might see kids that maybe they really struggle with catching the ball, like that timing piece isn't coming in. Or they can catch a ball on their own, but then as soon as there's other kids running around, there's all these different factors and they can't anticipate, they can't react. You might see them running, their running might look clumsy. It'll look very uncoordinated as opposed to, that sort of like straightforward running posture. They'll have kind of their arms out to the sides. They might trip over their feet a lot. You're going to see some issues with spatial awareness. So these are the kids where it's like Sally is always bumping into her friends. She's always leaning on things. She's always kind of resting on other people or, just kind of walking a bit more side to side. You'll also see it in those fine motor tasks. So it also applies to writing is usually a really big one. Okay. So like handwriting. You'll also see it with like arts and crafts or scissor use where maybe like their printing is a bit more jagged or they avoid it. Right? Okay. So it's just a bit more difficult. Or maybe they can do it when they have like good support for their full body. But if they're like sitting on a stool, then it's a lot harder. And we can chat a little bit more about the fine motor, gross motor interplay later. But so there's that fine motor component. I don't want to talk too much on it because that's kind of more of an SLP thing, but it can also have a lot of interplay with like the speech muscles. So around that area, which I know it's a thing. I don't know too much of the details. But obviously talking is oromotor is still motor, so that's affected as well. So yeah, it's kind of in everything. There's just that coordination piece. The movements aren't as efficient. They seem very clumsy. They take more energy. They take more time.
Okay. Yeah, I'm already imagining like you could have a caseload that is DCD, but every single child could have something drastically different in how that presents. That is very, very fascinating. I like that.
So with that, like if I'm getting it makes it harder to learn those things, but it doesn't make it so that they can't. So like essentially if they kind of like go through the effort of it, it is something that can kind of, with the right supports, get them to what would be a typical level of functioning and stuff like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. A lot of times once that skill is learned, it's still learned. But I think the biggest problem is that because it presents very innocuously a lot of the time, that these kids will kind of fall through the cracks, right? Okay. Because you might see a kid, let's say you're working with a kid named Bob, always my go-to name. You might not realize that Bob has DCD or he has even just general coordination difficulties because he just doesn't like playing sports. He just doesn't like gym class. And again, there's really this label of lazy or low effort, right? These kids are avoiding things like, oh, Bob avoids things that are hard, Whenever things get difficult, he just gets frustrated. He doesn't do them. Or even he's just like, oh, I don't really like it. And there are kids that just don't like it.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that can be hard to weed out, like which kids genuinely don't like it and which kids are discouraged. Right.
I can go on a whole like sidebar of like, people who, as a teacher who formerly was a math teacher, the people who are like, I just don't do math and stuff like that. And these languages that we talk about things like can be everything from dealing with the trauma of the experience of trying to do something where you're coordinated or not coordinated to, and having that intersect with just trying to function. And again, we have so many different things where people like reinforce this with language that then also kind of like, kicks out the opportunity before people even have the chance to really go and try and see what it is that they do like and stuff like that. And ends up being a bit of a bit greater challenge in trying to get those supports out there, because you want to really, like, I know a lot of Key's approach is going from those strength-based supports and like, what does someone love? And so if especially if you're working on coordination, it's like, well, I don't like soccer because of this one time that I, had this happen. And then you're trying to get them to kick a ball, and it makes it a little bit more difficult.
Yeah. One of the numbers that I heard was that kids with DCD will usually they might attend for like 3 to 4 times before they stop. Which, you might be like, oh, they're just not motivated to keep trying, but it might just be so much harder, right? That this kid is trying so much to get to the same point that these other kids are getting so quickly. It's very discouraging. And you see, and again, this is a lifelong condition. So adults still have this, like you don't grow out of it. But you might see people who, I totally lost my train of thought. We can edit this, right, Deanna?
Yeah.
Of course we can. So I was thinking, I'm kind of developing, is we've also been recording an episode on ADHD. And I'm kind of getting this sentiment that there will be generations who just internalize that they're clumsy. And they're just not good at sports, or they just need a little extra help up the stairs for the rest of their lives. Same with like with the guests that we had saying like, oh, like maybe just socially, culturally, generationally, you're just forgetful, you're just lazy. And that's I'm glad that this is another angle that we can break through and say, hey, no, this is a legitimate, serious thing that people like Karen can support you with. And the conversation keeps going. I love it.
It's interesting that you mentioned ADHD, because the stat that I heard quite recently is up to 50% of kids with ADHD have either DCD or difficulties with coordination.
Wow.
Oh,
so, all right.
Well, that explains my neuromotor deficits that I grew up with. Yeah.
And so they might not all present with gross motor delays or delayed milestones, but there's a very big overlap between ADHD and coordination difficulties, or DCD.
Wow.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that.
Yeah. And then I'm just thinking too about like our multidisciplinary team is that what if they are able to pinpoint one angle and one diagnosis, but not the other? Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I mean, there's
incredible.
also, you have your ADHD, you have your DCD, and then there's also a lot of interplay or co-occurrence between speech language impairment and DCD as well. So a lot of people who have speech language impairments will also present with DCD, because again, coordinating like the talking and the movement of the face muscles and the mouth muscles, you tell I'm not an SLP, is again, it's that coordination piece of communicating between your brain to those muscles that presents with speech, but as well as all these gross motor skills, these fine motor skills, your daily tasks.
Yeah. If there was one takeaway that I would hope anyone listening this far takes away, it's that brains are hard.
Brains
Brains
hard.
are complex. Brains have so much to coordinate, thousands of moments per second.
Yeah. Let's kind of take that into an example, actually.
Yeah.
Let's say hockey, right?
So Canadian pastime, very fitting for our group.
Hockey is a sport that a lot of kids play, a lot of kids enjoy it, but if you actually break down all of the things in 1 second of hockey, so let's say from a coordination, from an attention, from all of these standpoints, let's say you're standing on the ice. So first of all, you have skates on. You don't have to balance, right? That's much more difficult than just standing on like the ground. You're standing on this like tiny little blade. So you have to coordinate that. Then you have to coordinate all your other muscles to compensate for that, right? Let's say maybe you're starting to move and you're leaning one way, but you have to coordinate your ankle, your knee, your hips, your whole body has to go. But also you're holding a stick.
Yeah.
Where do my hands go on this?
Uh-huh.
Where do I place my hands? Where do I place the stick? Where is the stick? But also, why am I placing the stick there? Do I have the puck? Does that person have the puck? Are they on my team? Are they going to pass to me? If they pass to me, are they passing where I am or where I'm going?
Uh-huh.
And what am I going to do once I get the puck? But also, where's everyone else? Hockey's a contact sport, right?
Yeah.
There's somebody coming. Is someone going to hit me? Even if it's a non-contact version, there's still people skating around you. you don't want to bump into them because you'll fall over, right?
Yeah,
You don't want to be
yeah.
that person that hits your own defenseman. So like, where are all of them? And at the same time, you have like, where are you looking? What are you listening to? There's all of these things, which it's not just, okay, I'm standing here holding the stick.
Yeah.
Right?
Just take the stick and shoot. What's wrong with that? Like, yeah.
With everyone who's at the game, they'll be like, just shoot, you're managing so many different things, and it's quite the dance. I always like to call hockey's like chess on, skates with like everything's on fire with like swords. Everyone's got swords, and it's crazy to see everything, all the different things come together in the fluid motion. I think that's probably one of the things why we as Canadians just love it as a sport, because it does have all those things, and you do respect that, even though, some people will go down to like, just shoot the puck.
And I think that happens a lot with kids, where they're in gym class, and some kids you say, just shoot, and they'll shoot. And other kids you say, just shoot, and they're like, how?
How, where, to who,
and
to the goal, to this person.
Exactly. And even if it's not a matter of like, where do I shoot? Like physically how, right? There's this conception of practice makes perfect. Well, if you're practicing perfectly, the best example I can think of is myself. I've played ringette since I was 3 years old. For those who don't know, ringette is, for the purposes of this conversation, quite similar to hockey. You're on ice, you're holding a stick, but you're stabbing a ring instead of hitting a puck. I hold my stick wrong. And I have held my stick wrong for 25 years. I have had enough practice, but I hold my stick wrong. And I still hold it wrong. And it affects my shot. I just play defense. And I don't have to shoot nicely. And I also don't play very competitively, so it's all good. But if you have a kid that you're trying to get them to learn to shoot, and you're just saying, just shoot. Well, what if they're doing it wrong, right? And they're just keep doing the same thing and the same thing and the same thing. They're just going to keep doing that, right?
Yeah.
Some kids will be like, that's not working. I might hold my stick a bit differently, right? Because we all, that's how people figure stuff out, is they say, that's not working, let's adapt. But that's not as intuitive for everybody and for every skill, especially in a sport, in like those big team sports where there's so much going on. I can't shoot. Which factor do I even address? Right?
Yeah.
If I'm not shooting, like if I'm not scoring, if I'm not getting the puck where I want it to go, how do I know where to start? Right?
Yeah.
Because it could be the way you're holding your stick, like me. It could be any of those factors we've discussed so far. And for a kid who has difficulties with coordination, that is so difficult. And that's where that support comes in, because some kids will push through. Some kids like me will just be like, I hold my stick wrong. It's all good. I'm not going to go pro. It's okay. Some kids will just stop playing.
Yeah. Well, it just speaks to the need of just a greater part of like needing empathy in a lot of this stuff, because end of the day, like, you're going to interpret things from your own lens of like, oh, just do it like this. But most people don't break down on like, how you, not even just like the actions of how you do it, how you even think about that is completely different from person to person. I mean, we were having that conversation about language and like how people form language and like the concepts that are behind what we conceptualize in our brains, completely different from someone else. But yet through the miracle of communication, we're here having a conversation, and all those things in the words that we're bringing forth are stuff that we've created those associations so that we can have like this discourse. But you have one thing that breaks down that process, and you have to reinvent the wheel for that person so that they're able to roll the wheel.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So since you mentioned holding your ringette stick wrong, that just kind of made a aha moment in my brain, in my memories, because my mother is from Hong Kong, and I've grown up with chopsticks and forks and knives in my household my whole life. And according to most people, I hold my chopsticks wrong. Like, when you go to a restaurant and you'll get the disposable ones and it'll have that little guide of how to hold it. That is not how I hold mine. But my family did not correct me on this. And basically, it all boiled down to you can feed yourself.
Mhm.
You're using your chopsticks, right? So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts?
I think that's a really good transition into the concept of what is wrong when it comes to these skills.
Oh, yeah.
I also hold chopsticks wrong. Because I basically just like will stick one of my fingers in between the chopsticks to pry it open and then pull it out to close them, which is not how you're supposed to do it.
Okay.
But that's a really good transition into the purpose of doing it correctly versus function. So when I'm talking about holding my ringette stick wrong, the reason I say that is because I can directly see the impact it has on my play. The way that I'm holding my ringette stick, I can't get the wrist motion I need to get like a really nice lifted shot. So when I say wrong, I'm comparing it to that function,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
It works for me because I just don't go into the offensive zone very often. In ringette, you don't really have to if you're defense. And when I do, I just take low shots and I just kind of accept that as what it is. But there's a clear connection between what I, in theory, want, right? If I'm trying to be a really good shooter, I need to have that wrist movement in order to get the ring up, right? So wrong is probably not the best word I could have used, but it does lead into this conversation. With your chopsticks, you can eat.
Yeah.
So it doesn't super matter. However, let's say the way that you're eating with your chopsticks, you constantly drop your food, or even you do it, but it causes pain. That's when we care.
That's when it matters.
And
that's when you got to tag team you in there and support.
You know what? If you're doing chopsticks, I'd recommend probably an OT. They're a bit better with the fine motor skills, but it does depend, right? Like there's so much overlap with all the professions when it comes to DCD, especially when it comes to those goal-oriented goals, I guess. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about what we adapt and when we adapt it.
Yeah.
So one of the sort of the standards, or one of the very common approaches for working with kids with DCD, or just general difficulties with coordination, whether that's suspected but not diagnosed DCD, or just you're generally kind of noticing some issues, is called, so there's this approach called the co-op approach. And without going too much into the details of it, the whole idea is about basically teaching problem solving. And so you kind of have this approach where you look at what they're doing, and then what's the outcome? And then how do we assess that and decide what we change? And when I say we, there's a very strong emphasis on the client here, on the kid.
Okay.
So let's take my shooting in ringette. If I'm the kid and I have my therapist or my coach or my parent with me, and I'm shooting and I'm like, oh, I can't lift it, right? And then your therapist or whoever might be like, oh, yeah, you can't lift it. I wonder why, right? And then you might be like, oh, you know what? I think I'm facing the wrong way. We'll be like, oh, interesting. I wonder what happened if you faced a different way. Like if you were angled differently. I try that. I'm like, oh no, I'm still not getting it. And so then we kind of explore the different things that you can change one at a time. And then you see, does that affect the outcome towards what I want? So you keep kind of adjusting things. I'm like, and it's like, you know what? What happens if you hold it differently? Like if you hold the stick differently, then maybe I twist that and it works and I go, oh, that worked. So what we've done there is, and it's not that simple. It's not usually like the first time that you're like, oh, I wonder about this. Sometimes it takes a while to figure out what it is, especially when you're facilitating the kid to figure it out, as opposed to telling them what to do.
Yeah.
Right? Because if I tell you hold your stick differently, well, now you know how to hold your stick. But when you go to play soccer and you have trouble kicking the ball, that's an entirely different skill you have to relearn. And yeah, I mean, you can have a physical therapist, an occupational therapist teach you every single sports skill that you want to learn. But then you've only learned the sports skills that they've taught you. So if you understand this problem solving approach, where what do I want? What is the outcome I want? What am I doing? What happens? Does that work? Maybe not. How do I know if it worked? And so it's this very facilitating approach that allows it to be generalized to a bunch of different skills.
Yeah. Very cool.
Well, I think that's awesome, and like a really good way of building up the people's, resilience in dealing with the adversity of a disability in that sense. And like, especially, I like, it's for me, it sounded a lot like discovery learning. And like when we have kids, go through a topic and think about how things function. And then, so it really encourages that inquisitive mindset so that they can transfer that to other situations, whether it is the subject you're teaching or something else. But that's kind of just the same thing when you're dealing with something with like motor function and so on. And making sure that that's a really positive experience, because like just the same as we're talking about kids who, don't like a sport or whichever, if you can create a safe environment for them to like learn like that, then that skill is way more transferable to other situations. So, yeah.
Yeah. And it also removes, I think, the label of you're not doing that right. It's not right or wrong, which the more I'm like, don't say wrong. And I'm like, I said wrong. Phooey. But it's these things that are kind of instilled in us, but it's not, you're doing that wrong. That's not working.
That's not
right?
working. Yeah.
Right. Or the idea of it's not about you. It's just, this isn't the strategy. This isn't the method.
Yeah.
And you might work with two kids who are trying to learn the same skill, and they might end up doing it the same way. Or like chopsticks. You might have two people who use chopsticks completely differently, but they're both eating, right? And if you use this kind of approach, it does really help get there, because the kid is leading it as well. And so that gets a lot of buy-in, right? We were talking about how Trent was on the last podcast. I've worked with kids that Trent's also worked with, where he makes like detectives and he makes little badges, and you're trying to solve the mystery of the skill, right? And this applies to all kinds of things. I like kids who are trying to learn to put on their braces. They're like, I'm referring to leg braces here, not teeth braces.
The orthodontic college would be like, what are you doing?
Yeah, kids can put on their own teeth braces. It's fine. But like your ankle braces, where the kid's trying to put it on, and you're just like, that's not working. All right, let's get out our detective badges and let's solve the mystery. How do we do this? And so, yeah, I mean, that's a really fun way to do it, but kids will come up with all different ways to make it fun, right?
Yeah.
You can come up with different names for it. I had one kid where I said like, let's be detectives. And he goes, I prefer High School Musical. And I have no idea what that had to do with learning how to like get around his house. But I was like, okay, let's High School Musical. And he's like, cool. And then he got on the couch. And I was like, I don't see the connection, but I'm glad you do.
Okay. Did he get your head in the game? You got to get your head in the game. You got to.
That maybe that's what it is.
Maybe.
Mike, was that a short enough clip of her singing it?
Of her singing, that probably will be good for that.
Yeah, it'll be good.
We just got to keep it in the right time frame with that. But yeah, no, or like I'm thinking about, with this, it would have been really funny if you just started to break out into song as part of the treatment plan for that. That's just speaking wonders of our ability to provide care there, right? Like,
I'm trying to think what I actually did. And you know what? I'm going to be honest. I think I actually did start singing the same song Deanna started singing.
That one, or We're Soaring, Flying.
No, that one I definitely didn't sing.
Okay.
I don't think that kid wanted to hear me pitch that.
All right.
Just like, my ears. Oh, but then maybe he runs away. You know what? I'm thinking.
Okay.
Motivate
anyway,
with bad singing.
as we were saying, no, we follow the child's lead.
Yes.
We reframe these approaches. It's not nothing's wrong. It's just not working. It just doesn't fit. It just doesn't fit the need. It doesn't fit the intentions that our kids want to have by going through working with you.
And sometimes as well, it's not just the approach to the goal. Sometimes it's the goal that needs to change. So I have these lovely resources in front of me, which are from an amazing website. It's the Can Child website. So like CAN Child. It has a ton of resources on a couple different conditions, but especially for DCD. I highly recommend it. I think.
Do you have to be a professional to access this?
No,
Great.
It's just a website.
Okay.
And a lot of their resources are actually made for the layperson. So they have resources for coaches. They have resources for educators. And a lot of these resources will assume that you are coming into this blind or coming into this with very little information. So, I mean, every time I work in a school and I come across a kid who has suspected DCD, I will refer the teachers and the parents to this site There's a ton of good resources out there. It's not exclusively this one. I want to say it's made either by or in affiliation with McMaster University.
Okay.
But so one of the resources that I have in front of me talks about the MATCH approach.
Okay. So yeah, MATCH must be an acronym
Yes,
for something.
yes, not
Okay.
actual matches, but it's about matching the activity or matching the goal. So what I have here is there's modify the task, alter your expectations, teaching strategies, changing the environment, and help by understanding. So what we're kind of talking about just like a minute ago is the idea of changing the task and the expectations. So for example, we were talking about hockey and how hockey has so much that you need to coordinate, so much that you need to filter and go through. And especially when you're talking about, the co-occurrences between like DCD and ADHD, that's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
If what the kid or the client wants is to play hockey, then absolutely, let's make it work. But maybe it's not. Maybe like that might be a really, really hard thing for these kids to learn. So maybe that's just not the sport, right? Maybe we're looking at more like DCD friendly sports, which again, I no way am saying that kids with DCD or adults with DCD can't do whatever they want to do. But I'm acknowledging that some things take a lot more effort and they are a lot harder.
Mm-hmm.
So if the goal is just to be active, right? Just to be physically active, have fun, play with your friends. And maybe it's not hockey, maybe it's just skating, right? Because skating, you don't have to worry about what everyone else is doing. It removes a lot of that anticipation and that reaction. I mean, to some extent you have to, right? You hit a rut, you got to react, but there's less like confounding or complicating factors in that. So, I mean, kids with DCD tend to do a lot better in those like solo sports or things that maybe some people would consider more art than sport, but there's definitely a lot of overlap. So things like taekwondo, dance, again, swimming's a really good one.
Oh, love swimming.
Yeah.
I was thinking of like, I admire my friends who are in roller derby.
Oh yeah.
But don't throw me in to be a jammer. I am just gonna like just take me to the roller rink and I'll just do a nice gentle loops to some music.
Mm.
If I wanted to learn those techniques, maybe somewhere down the line, but I think I just want to enjoy the bliss of roller skating.
Yeah.
And not getting like a broken nose from someone.
Yeah,
Like, bam.
exactly.
There's multiple benefits to these types of sports for sure. But yeah, it removes a lot of those additional factors where if the point is just keeping kids active and reaffirming that you can participate in sport, it's just a different sport, right? It's just a different form of physical activity, right? Or maybe they just want to do dance, right? Or maybe they do want to get up to playing hockey or playing soccer, but maybe you start with, just playing pass, or you start with just skating and then you kind of build up from there. But yeah, a lot of kids will find more success and less frustration and more like higher self-esteem when they kind of go for those sports that have a lot less going on.
The last thing I want to do, like if you have so many of those instances of failure, is to just associate sports with like, this is too hard. I'm just not good at it. And I just, and modify these things so that you don't have that impression. Because that's such a heartbreaking thing or to just imagine a kid internalizing for life.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
And those kind of things stick with you, right?
Yeah.
Like I know tons of, from clients I work with, just people in my personal life who are just like, oh, I'm just bad at sports.
I'm just an indoor cat, what they might say.
Yeah. And having said that, like there are a lot of kids with DCD find a lot of enjoyment in more like sedentary activities. So like they might really enjoy like gaming or playing things online, which is awesome if you're trying to get like some social engagement, right? But you can still get that physical activity, that going out and playing with your friends, if you just pick the right activities. It's not as hard to get there with different activities.
Well, and I'm also thinking like with some of those kids who are in those other activities, that still is requiring a level of coordination and whichever. And like, that probably just even speaks to the idea of like the motivating factor, because it's like, well, gaming, most gaming is like a dopamine,
Yeah.
rewarding machine. So it's really easy to have that motivation piece when it comes to like learning. So, a kid may need to spend like 3 hours grinding it out on Fortnite or something. And then they actually get to the point where they have that skill.
Yeah.
Yeah. But because it's that difference. And I think the only thing with that is being very cautious and letting people know that, because this is like, we're dealing with neurology and of someone, it's not just the preference, it's you're fighting your nature in terms of it. It's not just that they can just pick it and then get with it. It's, yes, you can get to that level, but it's
hard.
building the right supports in the right positive environment. And telling them just do it. Well, maybe that's the wrong Nike.
The wrong Nike.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I mean, with video games, you might, like, some kids might have a really hard time with all those technical movements. But I mean, one, if you're playing a solo game, not a lot less pressure, right?
Exactly.
If something goes wrong, you just pause or you restart. And sometimes and because you can restart so instantly, there's no judgment, right?
Yeah.
I mean, some of the games have a bit of judgment on those dead screens, but we'll move past that. But also, if you have like the support for your upper body, if you've got a nice chair, and maybe let's transition back to like academics with this, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can set up you can kind of reduce the difficulties that come with those fine motor tasks by supporting the rest of the body. So whether that's gaming when they have like those nice supportive chairs, or it's just in the classroom where you're writing. And the amount of times I've walked into a classroom and I know like this kid has suspected DCD, I know that handwriting is going to be a thing. And even though like specifically handwriting is more of an OT thing, I don't come at it the lens of like, how do I make them write better? It's how do I make it easier? Right. And so I know some OTs will be like, is writing really what we need to be doing here? Like, is maybe typing better? Like, what's the goal? But from like a physical perspective, the first thing I look at is the chair. Because the first
chair
is the seating. Because if you think about it, like right now I'm sitting here, I have a backrest, which helps. But if I'm trying to write something down, that is a whole lot I have to coordinate with my hand and my arm and my shoulder. But right now, I mean, I'm sitting with my legs crossed. So only one of my feet are on the ground, right? I also don't have any side supports. I have to have my trunk engaged right now, or I'm going to fall over. And you will see that, right? Like I've talked to teachers who have said, like, they'll just be writing and they'll just fall out of their chair and they're just sitting there writing. But like every muscle in my body has to be engaged sometimes with just sitting.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, like it's second nature. I can sit with whatever weird posture I want to sit in. In fact, I frequently do. But you will find that kids have a lot more success when they have that proper support. And again, not every kid, right? Some kids, they kind of comes back into like, what's the actual cause? It might not be DCD. It could be your sensory seeking or ADHD kids that maybe don't also have those coordination conditions, or it's not the main factor where maybe they need to fidget to focus. But with DCD, maybe what you need is more support, right? So even something as simple as making sure that their hips are at 90 degrees, their knees are at 90 degrees, and their feet are flat on the floor.
Yeah.
Right? I worked with a kid where all it was the chair was a little bit high, and the teacher just put like a mat under his feet so he had full feet contact. And next time I went in, she's like, honestly, his writing is getting so much better just by sitting with more support.
That. Like, you can let me know if I'm on the same page here, but I am a big fan of adjustable standing, sitting desks. Totally saved my life. Like, I used to have lifelong shoulder pain, and then that was gone. And I have people who resist the idea of it because they think, well, I'll never stand and work. But I'm thinking, there's so many little micro adjustments just for that perfect sitting that maybe you do need a couple inches higher or lower.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
if you just adjust it to that one perfect height for the rest of your time using that table, then I think that's still a great use of that table.
Yeah, I mean, I like in terms of like the actual sitting standing component, I feel like a lot of kids would probably have more difficulty with standing because now you have to coordinate more. But if the desk is too high or too low, again, that's more you have to do. And I'm not saying I don't expect every school to have perfect ergonomic setups for every kid. That's an insane proposition. But, if you have a kid that has difficulty with coordination, they are falling out of their chair, maybe you just take a look at their setup, right? And again, I don't think every school is going to have sit to stand desks, but maybe at home when they're doing homework, maybe like the parents could get a different setup for the chair or the desk. And there's ways to do that without buying a new desk, right? It's like having that mat. It's, maybe when they're working, they have like a chair that has armrests, right?
Or these chairs upstairs. I guess I'm a little bit short for them. I always get a little extra footstool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's far more comfortable.
Absolutely. Honestly, the biggest thing I find is just getting hips 90, knees 90, feet flat on the floor.
There you go.
Yeah. But again, there's so much consideration. There's so many considerations with different kids and different conditions where some kids really need that like sensory, that fidgeting. And so sometimes you'll have kids who really need to fidget, but also they need that stability. And that's where you have to really look at individual needs and supports. And that's where those universal strategies are a good starting point, but it gets a lot more complicated.
It's honestly, it's amazing how interconnected everything is that way, and like and how the 1P in the mattress can lead to the complete dysregulation and having to find a new way to adapt. So one of the things I'm thinking is like I'm hearing this and I'm like I have a kiddo and I'm concerned that my kid has DCD. What would you say is like the next best step for say a family who you've already kind of talked to some of the small things you can adapt, but like what if you're thinking that maybe my kiddo has DCD?
I mean, generally speaking, I would say, like, especially from a financial standpoint, first thing is just try some of these universal strategies. Even if your kid doesn't have DCD, these strategies won't hurt. Try some of those, see how that goes. But always like talk to your medical team, talk to your school. Unfortunately, as far as I am aware, there's not a whole lot of like support. Like we do a lot of work through FSCD. Funding isn't really affected by a DCD diagnosis. But I have worked with kids in schools who have DCD or suspected DCD. So talking to your point of contact at the school about these concerns, talking to the medical team, even just getting it on paper that these kids have these difficulties and they need these accommodations can be very helpful. So, I mean, you can go to a bunch of different places. Like an official DCD diagnosis, I believe, has to come from a physician in Alberta. Okay. There is a questionnaire that starts that process and you can bring to your physician. And like I've done them, they're pretty straightforward. It's called the DCDQ or the little DCDQ, but you can get like any sort of professional can help facilitate that. So any sort of professional. Wow, that is very vague. Your dentist probably can't. But like, like an OT can help with that. A physio can help with that. A doctor can probably help with that as well. And that just kind of gets the ball rolling. It talks about different fine motor skills, coordination skills, gross motor skills. And that kind of starts that process. Doesn't have to start there. You can start with talking to your doctor, your pediatrician. And then, you can kind of use that as your starting point. One of the things that doctors will do with DCD is they will look into, is there anything else causing this? So with DCD, there isn't really like a clear underlying pathology. So if your kid has like cerebral palsy or something, that's not DC, that's different. Do these strategies still work for that? Absolutely. Right? Like even the co-op, the problem solving approach, you bet I've used that with kids who have cerebral palsy. Like it's very generalizable. I'd have to double check like with that specific approach what it's been like validated for, but it's just a generally helpful approach to teach kids to problem solve. But yeah, so they'll also rule out any specific like neuromuscular disorders that it's important to know what else is going on. One of the things that I think might be important is for DCD, it is not degenerative and it's early onset. Right? Like this is a lifelong condition. If you're like, oh yeah, my kid was hitting all their milestones and everything was going really well. They learned things really easy and now they're not. Now they're regressing. That's something else, right? Or most likely something else. I probably shouldn't put out any like absolute statements in regards to this, but that is something that you would want a physician to look into. Because DCD it's a consistent, and I mean, sometimes it will become more obvious as the kid gets older, because when before they start school, they're just looking at walking and crawling, which definitely are affected. But then you start being like, oh, and now while you're walking, throw a ball and do this, and it might become more apparent.
Yeah.
But if like there's a genuine regression or things are getting worse, then that's definitely something that you want to check in with your physician as well.
Tell me more about the teaching strategies you do as a PT to support.
Yeah. So there's a lot of sort of general strategies that you can kind of pick and choose from to see what works best for you.
Okay.
We chatted a little bit about different sports and sort of the different environmental and considerations there. But that also applies to anything just in terms of environment, right? If I'm doing the same skill in a room with like a bunch of people running around, it's hard for me to focus as much as I need to on what I'm doing. So sometimes it's just a matter of removing distractions. Sometimes it's a matter of focusing on one body part at a time. So instead of trying to coordinate all these things with all these people running around and I'm getting a bunch of different instructions and it's chaotic, we're like, okay, we're going to kind of step off to the corner, or we're going to have like a separate room. You can kind of pick what works best for the kids, because sometimes, you don't want to single kids out. Sometimes you just have to normalize that you're singling them out. You're like, yeah, we're just going to go do a little bit extra. It's okay. And there's ways to normalize that, but that's a separate conversation. But you might have that quieter space, that calmer space, whether that's, sound, there's less sounds, or less going on visually, less to look at. They're able to focus a lot better on those specific individual skills. Isolating sort of, let's say, we talked about fine motor where you support the rest of the body, but that also applies where if I'm learning to, let's say, hold a stick, maybe I'm not focusing on skating right away, right? Like if I'm trying to like puck handle, maybe I'll just start by practicing that on dry land, right? Where I'm just focusing on the stick handling. That's one thing at a time. Let's work on that. Then let's work on the next thing. So that's another really big one, is doing that. You can also do some of it for them, right? Make things a bit easier, right? If it's like a craft that's really tricky, maybe I already have the materials for them. Maybe I already have like the glue stick like open, or someone's willing to help them open it. Which again adjusts that. It's not really a teaching strategy, but it does allow them to focus on what's actually important about it.
Yeah.
You can also have, like let's say with getting dressed to go outside, maybe I will start the zipper and then they finish the zipper. And then we sort of build on that.
Did we call that backwards chaining or something?
Yes, backwards chaining is
Yeah, I think that's backwards. There's also forwards chaining, and nobody tell Trent, but I don't remember the difference. I remember the difference. I don't remember which is which.
Trent's watching this right now, and he's like, I'm judging you.
I'm going to get a phone call. So disappointed. But yeah, so there's a bunch of different strategies there. I'm just going to see if I wrote anything else down. Yes. Okay. So those are obviously some changes with the environment, with the task, but you can also change the way that you teach. So, I mean, I think a lot of people are aware there's different learning. What's the term I want here?
Learning styles.
Learning styles. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Different learning styles. And that also applies here. So, for example, we were talking about, when a kid's trying to kick a ball, you just say, kick the ball. And for some kids, that will work. And then you might see, oh, you're kicking it. You're like, hey, maybe try turning your foot. That's verbal. But for some people, that's one, not specific enough. And two, verbal alone can be very difficult. I'm sure everyone has received verbal instructions at some point and been like, I have no idea what you've just told me to do. Like, that does not compute into an image in my head. So maybe they need a demonstration. Maybe they need multiple demonstrations. Let's also think, am I facing you and mirroring you? Like, so you're moving your right, I'm moving my left, but it looks the same? Or am I standing beside you, in front of you, facing the same way, so you can see I'm moving my left, you're moving your left? So demonstrations are really big. Sometimes you can actually like physically guide the movements the first time. So, I mean, with kids, you want to make sure, with kids, you never want to force the movement, right? Like, I'm not going to grab your arm and be like, this is how you throw. But I might be like, hey, can I show you? Okay, so I'm going to hold your arm and I'm going to bring it into this position. So not only can you see it, not only am I telling you, you can also feel it.
Yeah.
Right? So that's that proprioception piece that I know you guys have talked about in different podcasts. But I feel where my arm is. That's an additional sense that's being involved. And then you might guide them through the rest of the motion, or you might just get them in that position. You can also have some tactile. So I might be like, oh, this is the arm we're moving. Hey, can you move your hand right here? And it's just gentle taps, but it draws their attention to it, right? Or being like, oh, lift up this leg, right? And I'm not doing the movement for them. I'm just reminding them, right? And so those are things that, like, in terms of prompting can really help. But if I'm thinking, like, if you have a class or if you have a team, what's going to be really big is slowing it down and giving them time and having compassion for the fact that some kids will need more time. And again, there's a lot of kids who have difficulties with coordination or have DCD but aren't diagnosed. So you might be accommodating for Billy over there, but it turns out there's another kid or two that also has these difficulties, right? I think it's like estimated to be about 5% of school-age children, although the range I've heard can be like between like 2 to 20.
Wow.
I'd have to double check the numbers on that, but
Well, it just seems like, again, you were saying, like, it isn't necessarily always the priority to get that diagnosis. And so, like, just like what we're hearing here is like a little more empathy, a little bit more time given people, just giving people grace does a lot of wonders in terms of supporting everyone's learning.
Yeah. And you want to give that instruction, but you also want to give time for kids to play around with the movement, right? I know we're talking a lot about how just because someone's doing things more doesn't mean it'll improve, but sometimes kids will figure things out on their own, right? Give them a few times to try it and then just think, what do I notice? And then maybe I bring that to the kid's attention. Hey, what do you notice?
Or give them a few times working with their friend, and you know, that social aspect kind of comes in, and they support each other, or they learn how to hold their ringette stick wrong together, or their chopsticks.
Or I'm thinking, like, if it's a snowy Canadian day, and don't go straight to the snowball fight. Let's just build little snow castles and forts first. Let's just touch the snow.
Absolutely.
Build snowmen. We don't have to go into combat yet.
That's the takeaway from this episode. We don't have to go into combat yet.
Yeah.
But also, like, it doesn't have to be the adult that's doing those demonstrations, right? Like, even something as simple as like, oh, when we're walking in the hall, watch your friend, right? And I'm probably going to pick a friend that's like, not going to be like walking really silly, because that's probably not going to be super helpful. But if I'm like, oh, do you see how like your friend there is kind of walking? Like, when you're walking, watch their feet and copy that.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes those movement videos can be really helpful because, one, you get the kids' attention because it's a screen. that is just how reality works. Kids like screens. Yeah. But then they're also seeing that visual, and a lot of those videos are very repetitive, right? So they get those additional reps, which sounds very fancy, but it's just doing it more, right? It's going to take longer. It's very likely to take longer. It's going to take more effort. They might need more breaks, and they might not get it the first time, even if you give them 100 tries.
Yep.
But just allow that time.
It's almost like the Olympian who practiced in their brain when they were injured and stuff like that. It's, you just get those reps in and you can kind of do it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of, like, as a weird joke of what would be the 1 rep max behind a screen.
Yeah. And I mean, personally, I think also shifting the goalpost a little bit. So when there's so much frustration about being successful and being good enough, maybe it has nothing to do with like the actual physical outcome, right? When we're talking about those like problem solving strategies, there's a very clear outcome. Okay, I can hit the ball 3 times.
Yeah.
But if you're just playing with friends, it doesn't really matter, right?
No.
Like, no, as long as no one's getting hurt more than you would expect when kids are playing, then, you know what, if they're throwing the ball and the one kid's throwing it and they keep missing, but their buddy doesn't mind like running after it and burning the energy to go get it, you don't have to step in and be like, let's maybe lift that elbow up, right? Sometimes that's not the most important thing. Sometimes what's most important is just being like, physical activity can be fun and it can be low pressure, and it doesn't always have to be done right.
Yeah.
Right? Especially when it's not competitive. You know what? Let's just have fun. Let's just practice. Or, you know what? Today, instead of like throwing balls around each other, we're just going to throw balloons. Because maybe the anxiety is like, if I don't catch that, that's going to hit me in the face.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you hit a kid in the face with a balloon, they're fine. I mean, there's exceptions to every rule, and some kids are going to be nervous about balloons as well. But like, you know, maybe we're not throwing at each other. Maybe we're just throwing at the wall. That way, if I miss, it's the wall. You know, like there's a lot of ways to remove that anxiety, remove that pressure, whether that's an attitude shift or the task shift.
I love that. No, thank you.
Yeah, this has been like really informative. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different things you can like just explore on your own and, you know, learn whether it is something that you want to learn more about and consider with your, if this is something that you might need to check your child for, or even yourself.
Yeah. And I mean, there's tons of places to start. I know we've kind of chatted about it, but as we're kind of wrapping up a little bit, maybe I'll just summarize some of those things.
Sure. Go for it.
So, I mean, places to start. There's amazing resources out there. Again, the Can Child site is great. Just have a look up for DCD. Just, of course, check your sources. I think there's like dyspraxia foundations. There's a bunch of really great resources out there, and just try things, right? See what happens, see what helps. Have compassion, go slow. If you're working with a kid and they're not getting it, that's okay, right? Just acknowledge that it's hard and, you know, just have fun with it. Embrace the parts of it that are fun, right? If they're starting to get frustrated, you can take a break or you can shift it, right?
Yeah.
If you're trying to be like, oh, we're not hitting that target, be like, that's okay. Target's scary. Like, you know, like you can just make it silly. It's all good. And then, you know, see how that goes, kind of go through that. And then, you know, if you're really noticing this having an impact on someone, the sooner that you can get help and you can get those strategies in place within whatever means that you have, absolutely reach out. Whether that's an SLP, an OT, a physical therapist, your doctor, even just like a teacher, right? Get those strategies in place, get those accommodations in place. You want to get ahead of it before you start seeing that negative self-esteem, that labeling, right? Before you start seeing those kind of things, the sooner is better with that. And this is a lifelong condition. So it's...
You can be frustrated for a long time, or you can have a lot of fun for a long time.
And even if you don't learn the skills, maybe you just learn the compassion for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Or for your kid or for whoever you're working with. But like, there's so much that physio and OT can do to help, whether it's the problem solving or maybe it's just one skill, right? Maybe you're just like, my kid is not learning how to play soccer and they really, really want to play soccer or they really want to ride a bike. There are tons of resources out there. There are tons of physios, OTs. Obviously, I'm thinking of this from like a physio perspective, what I would do, but sure, let's work on an individual skill. Let's work on general skills. Let's figure it out. There's a ton of different strategies that you can try. There's tons of games and ways to make it fun. And, you know, whatever the kid wants to work on, there's a lot that you can do to keep that interest in physical activity going and prevent any of the sort of negative connotations.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you again for guesting once again with us for this amazing episode. I feel like I've learned a lot, and it's a really good reminder for all of us to be patient with ourselves and go with grace and have fun along the way. Nothing is wrong. It's just different. It's just not a good fit. It's just not a good fit.
Yeah. And, you know, even if it's a diagnosis, it's not that there's something wrong or different about you. It's just, sometimes it's just the task. Sometimes it's something else that needs to change or someone's opinion, and that's okay. Right. Yeah. And a lot of these accommodations or a lot of the things we've chatted about will help any kid. Right. So have compassion, go slow, and just have fun. It's probably the biggest thing. Just enjoy it. Kids will only do things that they want to do. I think everyone can agree to that. Yeah. So just have fun.
Well, in the spirit of fun, let's do our salute.
Okay.
Everyone wants to do it, right?
Karen Wisheu, everybody.
Yep. All right.
3, 2, 1.
Whoosh.
Oh, talk about things that are hard to coordinate.
Key Talks is a project of Key Creative. Our co-hosts are Paula Audrey Rivero and Deanna Halls. Our production team is Michael Schwake, Jessa Dupuis, and Deanna Halls. Music by John Rivero. To reach out to us or access services for you or your family, visit keycreative.com. That's QICreative.com and fill out our online intake form. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.